Everyone, it's Edward here again to talk to you a little bit more about the insurance policy for your home or business property. Today, I want to focus on the simple introductory pages for your insurance policy, the ones people are most familiar with that they get in the mail at least once a year to describe your coverage extents, premiums, things like that. Just kind of go by step through some of these most important summary pages so that maybe you can use this as a reference for when you get your policy in the mail and you understand what some of these things are from an attorney's perspective. So I am going to demonstrate a policy here for you. And this is an Olympus insurance policy from about 10 years ago or so. You can see how exorbitantly premiums have gone up in Florida over the last 10 or so years by seeing what this person was paying in premiums, about $5,000 for over $1 million in coverage. But that's kind of just an aside to this conversation. But anyway, here's the policy. It starts by telling you the coverage period, which is always going to be a year. Talks about your premium and how that amount is calculated. And obviously, these are called declarations pages, are going to look different depending on who your insurance company is. But for the most part, all of this information is going to look like this in structure and the content. And so one of the key sections in the declaration is going to be your coverage limits. So that's an important thing to take a look at every year. Make sure you're properly insuring yourself for the liabilities you have, the value of your property, particularly as property values in Florida are going up. You want to make sure that you're being properly insured. Personal property. So if you have any kind of valuable furnishings in the home, appurtenances, things like that, you want to make sure you're properly covered for that as well. Coverage D, you see here, loss of use. This will apply if, God forbid, you ever have to vacate your home due to the extent of damage. So if you kind of figure more or less the size of your family and what kind of home you live in and equivalent values, you can get an idea of, if I'm out of my home for 4 to 6 months in a really bad situation, how much money do I need to cover myself, not only for residing in a temporary home, but maybe additional food expenses, gas expenses, things like that. There's also going to be typically in your policies a liability coverage. So if someone's on your property and they are injured, and they decide to file a claim against you, your basic property insurance policy is actually going to cover that as well. So that gives you an idea of the extent of coverage you may have for that. And then you can see also some of your deductibles maybe in there. Your hurricane deductible, as opposed to your all perils deductible, should be delineated in this situation or in this section. As well as there should be a summary at some point of what I find to be probably the most important, let's say, secondary item in this list after your basic extensive coverages are explained. And this endorsement section will kind of give you a table of contents or rubric for the additional forms that are going to be included in your policy that may retract from or limit the types of coverages that you have. So, for example, the first one listed here is a fungi wet dry rot, or also known as a mold endorsement that may limit the type of mold coverage you have in your policy. A hurricane loss mitigation endorsement, we don't know what that is without reading it, and I'll talk more about that in a further video, but that should raise a little bit of a red flag in your mind if you see any endorsements that are affecting your hurricane coverages, because that is, of course, one of the most threatening perils that we can face as Floridians. So these are the little things that you want to look at. If you see something in here that you don't understand, maybe call your agent or call me. But this is where you see these additional documents that are included beyond the basic coverages in your insurance policy that I'll be talking about in a future video. These are additional forms that you want to have copies of and read them so you understand what effects they're having on your main form policy, which usually are not good. So this is usually things that are being taken away from your coverage, and you want to know about that. Some other forms you may see, things like this. It basically tells you how your premium was calculated and things you can do to maybe reduce your premium. Another summary of limits of insurance. It's reflecting the same coverage as we saw on the first page. And a lot of people look at this. I think this is somewhat helpful, but not the full story. what's called a checklist of coverage. I would say it's good to at least take a look at this, and you can see some things that are typically excluded from these policies. Most commonly, it's going to be things like flood and sinkhole. But if you're looking at it from a basic perspective and getting an idea of what things may be covered, this could be helpful. But the Florida law will dictate that this does not govern what your coverages actually are. It's just a summary page. And to the extent there's any conflicting language or different language interpreting these coverages in a different way in your main form policy, it's the main form policy that controls. So this is really just a summary to make it as easy as possible for people, but it's not ultimately what's going to govern your coverage. So you may see some additional coverage limitations in here. And this is something else I'll talk about in a future video. This person has, for example, debris removal coverage. Let's say there's a really bad hurricane, causes a lot of damage, and things like drywall or trees or landscaping needs to be removed. That would be a coverage that could be extended beyond the basic coverages. And you can see some other things in here. So this is a useful document overall, and this is typically what people look at because they're not going to spend hours reading the full policy. So there is some good information in here. Definitely keep this in your records, but remember that this is just a simplification of what's actually going to explain how your insurance company is going to look at your claim if you do file one. So hope that's helpful. If you have any particular questions about the content of a declaration page, this video could merit much longer explanation, but that's just some of the most basic content that I thought was important to describe. So thanks for tuning in. Again, if you have any comments or questions, please drop it down below and I'll be happy to answer that.